Hello, it's Peter and Tammy Joe discuss kinky movies again. Tonight we're going to talk about the 2022 picture Sanctuary, directed by Zachary Wygod. My name is Peter Tupper. I'm a historian, writer, journalist, language teacher, and I've published a book called A Lover's Pinch, A Cultural History of Sadomasochism. And I'm working on a new book called The Celluloid Dungeon about kink in mainstream media. And my colleague can introduce herself.
Hi everyone, I'm TammyJo Eckhart. I'm an ancient historian, a folklorist, and I'm also an award-winning author and kink educator.
Good. Now, I saw this in the theater,
Oh.
and we have a repertory theater here in Vancouver where I live, and I was intrigued by it. Um, it's what in theater you call a two-hander, where it's almost the entire film is just two characters in a constrained setting. Um, and what was your experience with Sanctuary?
So I watched it here on streaming. I've seen it twice now, very recently. Um, I mean, you can definitely tell it was made in when it was because it's probably during the pandemic that was being made. And the movie is I'm glad you didn't try to describe what it is, like
Hmm.
succinct, because it is, I think that's something we're going to talk about.
All
What
right.
exactly is this movie? So,
Yes. Yes. And for the record, it stars Margaret Qualley and Christopher Abbott. Now, are we going to go into the plot summary here, or are we going to sort of like discuss it as it goes, as it
I
unfolds?
think we discuss it as it goes because what is the plot of this movie?
All right.
I had one idea about a third of the way through, another idea half the way through, and at the end I went, what the hell did I just watch?
Hmm.
So,
Yes. Well, it starts off with our lead actor. He's in a luxury hotel room, and his name is Hal Porterfield. Meets with a woman, Rebecca, from a law firm who is interviewing him in preparation for becoming the CEO of his late father's hotel empire. And it starts off fairly ordinarily. So, there's paperwork and she's interviewing him about things. But Rebecca starts pushing back on certain things. Like she's like slightly mocking him for his answers.
well, his answers are ridiculous.
Yes.
He
Like,
claims he's like 6'3" and
mm,
200 pounds.
yeah,
And I don't know what the actor really is, but he can't be either of those things. So,
yes. And like, she says, starts to say things like, you've never been anywhere near a rehab. You've never, he claims that he's done drugs. And then he says, no, you haven't. And like you couldn't drink that whiskey without wincing. So she's at every point she's kind of like undermining his masculinity, like saying she sort of derisively writes down on the form how Porterfield fucks like Caligula, as if to say we both know that's a lie.
mhm.
And this keeps going until she's outright humiliating him. And she even like coaxes him into um, going. I may be jumping a little too far ahead here, but she coaxes him into going into the hotel suite's bathroom and cleaning it, stripping down to his underwear and cleaning it. And she's sitting there, sort of barricading him into the bathroom with her own body, and like watching him do this, constantly. And she starts needling into his psychology about how he feels about his father, how he feels about the coming job,
Mhm.
and things like that. And eventually it works out that, she jokingly notices that he has an erection and she allows him to masturbate.
Yeah. Well, I think you skipped an important part though.
Okay.
When they're still on the interview,
Yes.
he says, "No, this isn't what I asked for.
Ah,
You,
right.
you
Okay.
know, you're not supposed to do it. You're supposed to say this." And she gets her paper out. She says, "Here it is," and she starts reading it. We see it. There's a script.
Yes.
Um, some of the things in the script are specific, like say these words. Some are more like general, like I
Yes.
will do this or you will do that. So this isn't like the script level of Burgundy. If you haven't
Mm.
watched our review of Burgundy, please, Duke of
Yeah.
Burgundy,
D
please go back and do that.
yeah. Duke of Burgundy. That was a that and there the submissive had a hyper detailed list of script for her dominant.
Yeah. So this first thing, at that point, we know if you didn't think beforehand, okay, this was a scene, right?
Mm.
This is a scripted scene. And then it ends, right? And we discover she's been wearing a wig, which if you paid attention, you kind of see the outline of darker hair anyway.
I don't think she
Um,
takes the wig off until like the scene transition to and they're having dinner together. I think she leaves the wig
yeah,
on.
she takes it off, and that's
Yeah.
when they have the dinner and they say it went well.
Yeah.
She picks up her money. Okay, and now we know that she's a pro.
Mm. Hal says to Rebecca, "You're off script." And then she says, "No, I'm not." And she brings out the script and they proceed on from that. So we know at this point that this is this is a dominant submissive encounter that he has set this up and they are proceeding and they that's when it sort of slowly escalates to the point where he's literally scrubbing the bathroom, scrubbing the dirt behind the toilet, getting and she's getting further and further into humiliating him. That's sort of the first big twist. Is there some other no, from of that phase of their interaction? Is that enough, or do we want to proceed to the next one?
The twist really comes where he gives her a gift,
Hmm.
which I want to say is a very strange gift to give to a woman.
Hmm.
It's a rather masculine looking watch, which she at one point comments that it's like, oh, this is like her retirement gift as a
Yeah.
cop. Because he says, this is the last I'll be seeing you.
Yes. So yeah, because he orders like a big luxurious dinner for them to eat. She's taken off her wig, her blonde wig. She's a brunette, and she's I keep wondering where'd the wig go? It seems to have vanished. But anyway, and he's talking. He says, you were great last night. You were great and everything, but he also says, this is our last session. I've done. This has helped me. I'm ready to undertake my job as CEO of the my late father's company. So the scenario they were playing out is has does touch reality or their reality.
Or we think
And
it does.
yeah, we think it does.
Because before, remember, she was saying things about the job and his father and stuff like that. Um, and his father, by the way, the company is a hotel chain.
Hmm.
And I assumed that this is one of those hotels,
Yes.
considering how he acts in it.
I don't know, a parting gift, a severance package. He gives her a very fancy watch. I know yeah, I mean, you mentioned it just didn't occur to me, but it does look like a man's wristwatch. I don't know, maybe it's a sign of his respect of her power, but it is a pretty expensive. He later says it's like $30,000. So he's broken it off with her. He says, "Thank you for everything, but I don't need you anymore." He sends her out. She goes out into the hallway towards the elevator. She sees a picture of um, Hal, his late father, and their mother. And then she decides to go back in. So this is another big twist.
I will tell you at this point, watching the movie for the first time, I was like, why would she do this?
Okay.
If she's a pro dom
Hmm.
and she's clearly skilled at what she does,
Yep.
I understand he's like a good, solid cash income for her, but she should
Dare I
have other
say cash
ones.
cow?
Yeah, she should have other ones. We
Yes.
have no idea how often they see each other.
Hmm.
I just don't think that most pro doms would be like, oh no, this terribly upsets me. And
Yeah.
so I put that together with the watch and some of the other stuff went on, and I went, are we still in the scene? And by the time
I
I rewatched it today
mhm.
for our discussion, I am now more convinced than the first time I watched it that almost all of this movie is one big gigantic scene. Because the alternative
Yeah.
makes the movie really distasteful to me.
Okay. Now, does that mean that sort of like even the glitch in the first part of their meeting when he said, you're off script, that even that sort of glitch is part of the mise en scène, if you will, to be
Yeah,
pretentious?
I got up to look at the script
Yeah.
when it was on the screen, and yeah, that is part of it.
So okay, so even the
Yeah,
flaws
even the
of
flaw is
are part of
there.
her. So
Yeah. And I think that explains the watch. It
okay.
explains some of the words that he uses and she uses back. Um, and just this, for me, completely unbelievable responses she has as things seem to escalate
Yeah.
and get really dangerous. Um, there's what appears to be sexual violence
Yes.
in this movie, which is not sexual violence if this is one big scene. But if it isn't and things are like this, then we witness a rape, at least one of them,
Mhm.
as well as threats to people's lives, kidnapping, you know, and that's really distasteful to me.
Yeah.
If this is one giant scene, then it's very interesting psychologically speaking, and may have some commentary about the femdom male sub relationship in comparison to our greater society. But I don't know if that's just me imagining it because the idea of, oh no, here's another pro dom that turns, and the movie's got to turn into some sort of weird crime, some sort of weird,
Hmm.
people who are crazy. I mean, it
Yeah.
can't just be like a relationship. And
Yeah.
I'm tired of
Because
that. I'm
yeah,
tired of that, directors.
yeah, because Rebecca does some very strange things. So
Exactly.
so she comes back into the suite. She basically her rationale is that that Hal is going to step into a position, he's going to inherit it, that he's going to get paid for, something like millions of dollars a year. She Her rationale is that she made him into a person who could do that job. Therefore, she should have part of his annual salary. And they settle on, so she starts talking about, like, you pay me $6 million.
She says half of your salary,
Yeah, so
which is
$6
4
million.
million.
4 million.
Later he says I can give you 6 million.
Yeah,
And I'm like, why? She didn't ask for more.
yeah. This is when they start arguing back and forth. How, did you make me into this? I wrote, Hal says, I wrote all of your dialogue, everything you said and did. And, I knew what I needed and I just used you to get to that. And she says, no, I know you better than you know yourself. You couldn't even begin to, when you called me first, you could barely talk on the phone. I've made you a person who can be like that. So they go back and forth about that for a while. Eventually she starts trying to, the topic of blackmail comes up. And he says, would the board still accept, their new CEO if they know he gets dominated regularly? And at first, Hal just shrugs that off and they say, so what? This isn't the 90s anymore. Nobody cares about that kind of thing. Then he basically says, also, you can't blackmail me if you don't have proof of anything. That's when she says, aha, I hit a camera here. Now, he starts this starts really working on him. He starts almost, going through the suite, like tearing things down. Um, she puts on a stereo and starts dancing for no apparent reason. Um,
Yeah, and the music before was
yes.
classical music. and somehow she gets disco.
Mm,
And I'm like, okay, maybe it's an in-hotel like streaming service they pay for. You can just pick the
yeah.
genre you like.
I don't think we should be hung up too much on the realism here. I see this as almost a fairy tale, almost like something that sort of exists in its own world rather than any reference to realism.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting that, before the role she's playing is kind of in control. And then
Hmm.
when she starts to go crazy, the crazy bleeds over into like the music, what she's
Yeah.
physically doing. Also, he kind of goes crazy though,
Yes.
because he starts literally ripping apart the hotel room.
Yes.
Shockingly, missing the one place we later learned there was a camera, at
Hmm.
least the one place. And I'm like, really? As much as he's ripping this place apart, he missed that? And again,
Also,
that was another tick for me of this is a scene. They've set this up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Also, wouldn't the cleaning staff notice there's a camera planted there?
Yeah, right down towards the bathtub at an angle where you can see his, I mean, come on.
Yeah. So, eventually he like shocks himself in an electrical socket and
Yes.
he falls down and he like these go back to talking again. Um, Now I can't remember the exact progression of the story, but at a certain point he starts threatening her. He starts saying things like, I can make you disappear. I have the money to make a person like you disappear.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets even more crazy because, you know, Rebecca is poking a bear with lots and lots of money. And if we've learned anything from the past 10, 20 years or so, is that, you know, people with lots and lots of money can really get what they want and help the people who don't have lots and lots of money.
Yeah. But it isn't immediate that he threatens her with the blackmail. That goes on quite a while
Well, it's not
with the
blackmail,
blackmail
but
things.
basically says, yeah, but basically he says at some point he says, I can make you disappear. I can crush you. I can,
Yeah.
he
It's
doesn't
because he
phys
says to her, you're not afraid of me because you think I'm just a helpless bitch.
yes.
She says, no, I know you're a helpless bitch.
Hmm.
And she goes in another room. He waits for a while, and then he comes in, knocks over. It's like a
Shelf.
yeah, and then he sits on it and he says, that's when he says, if I wanted to, I could make you disappear.
Yes. And I think is that, you want to provoke violence out of a man, insult his masculinity, call him weak, call him fragile, call him ineffectual. That's, a lot of men, that's their berserk button. And so, as I said, she's poking a very large bear
Hmm.
and gambling that she knows him well enough that he won't actually go through with it.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of a bluff and counter bluff because at some point she also says, "Oh, there's no camera. I just made that up."
Yeah, that's when she suddenly acts like, okay, he could make me disappear and everything. And it's like, what is going on? And this is interesting because he before then they were at least starting to connect again, like
Hmm.
start and I don't know. It just got kind of crazy and I kept going, what is going on here? Who in an actual situation like this, either one of them would react like this?
Yeah.
I just don't buy that anyone would react like this. And something I notice is that there are moments when he seems to get really angry, but he almost always seems to also have this little smirk on his face. Like all of this is making him really happy.
Yeah.
And she's also really not looking all that afraid.
Is she just putting on a brave face? Is she, again, it's a bluff and counter bluff kind of thing. But the point is that she may not have a bullet in her gun, but he definitely does.
Until he finds out she does.
Yeah. But I
And
mean, it's
that's
not so
that's when
much.
he like tries to turn the tables and he
Yeah.
grabs her, he ties her up.
Yeah.
He threatens her with a knife. She threatened him with a knife before.
Yeah.
and they'd had sex.
Supposedly, Rebecca is a non-contact professional dominant. It's all psychological. And apparently that she says that's her specialty. So at one point, she literally has, takes off her pants and has sex with him and says basically it's a really weird and very uncomfortable scene for
Yeah.
on many levels.
And if this is really her trying to blackmail him and stuff,
Yeah.
she has just raped him.
Yes. Is she going to blackmail him with a secret baby? Is she going to blackmail him by the fact that she has his, going to go and claim he raped her because
Hmm.
she has his sperm in her? Or it seems to be like this is his dream to have sex with her, that he's falling in love with her or infatuated with her. So it
And
was,
she's the one who says all those words.
yes.
Like supposedly she's quit her job, which is apparently being a pro
Yeah.
dom. And I'm like, how do you actually quit your job of being a pro dom? She says
Well,
she like got she fired her agent, I guess, who helps find her gigs.
yeah.
But I feel like that's a thing you could just literally slide back into.
She has a vanilla job. She talks about how much she hates her job and hates her everyday life. So that's why she likes dominating. And then she says that she likes dominating Hal specifically so much that she quit her regular job. She doesn't see any other clients. She broke off with her fiance and she's totally focused on dominating Hal because that's when she feels alive. That's when she feels best. Like she hates herself the rest of the time. The only time she feels like the person she wants to be is when she's dominating him. And she says that she did record their sessions for herself. I think that's bad practice for a pro dom.
Yeah. Unless it's all part of the client's fantasy.
Yeah, to be that fixated on one client, put your entire financial situation, stability, dependence on one client, and not have any recourse. And it's so that actually comes much later, sort of more of a third act thing, which he mentions that, and it's
Yeah.
just like what's real? Which way is up? I don't know because,
Yeah.
she says, I planted a camera. No, I didn't. Yes, I did. And like once a person's lied and then lied about lying, why why trust them
Yeah.
about anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, she just behaves in this really bizarre way and that
And
just
he also lies though.
yeah,
Because like he's saying after they're out of the first act, that the one thing that we're 100% sure is a scene, she asks him about the board. Is that going to be part? He's like, well, we don't have a board. And she's like, well, that's kind of weird because you're a public owned company. He's like, well, we don't have a board. We do it differently. And then later he says, well, my board wouldn't understand. And she's like, ha, you got a board. And I'm like, so basically, I'm not, I have some ideas of maybe what's going on overall, but um, if people are watching this and listening and going, this sounds like a mess, it really is because you don't really understand what is happening and what might be something they've set up from the beginning,
yeah.
or actually what their relationship is, because right at the end, it seems to be something quite different.
It's because we have no outside understanding up of who these people are outside of this room and before they we start with how, so we don't know how, who knows how much of this is made up, who knows of how much of this is part of the fantasy. So it's so hard to tell what's real and what isn't. We're supposed to be like peeling back the layers to get to the truth of these characters, but instead we're just keep finding more lies because Hal has his own sort of, he presents himself as tries to be like tougher and more capable than he actually is. And Rebecca sees through that, but I think she really underestimates that he really could be strong, for lack of a better word, enough to actually be dangerous to her and seriously mess up her life, if not directly physically hurt her. She's basically saying, "You're not a man enough to actually hurt me." But all he has to do is hurt her to prove that her wrong. And
Yeah.
that's that's playing Russian roulette
Yeah.
with three
But
bullets in the gun.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know that we need to lay necessarily the rest of it out because
Yeah.
it's but maybe we should talk about what we think is overall going on.
Well, okay, my interpretation of the is that so there's the opening scene between them. After that, it's not seen. And so all of that is real, but with a lot of bluffing and posturing. But I think that eventually Hal runs out of ways to assert himself. That Rebecca has gone through every conceivable counter argument he can make. So the only thing left to him is to say sanctuary, his safe word, because, and that's the only recourse left to him. I think that's like after he's gotten violent with her, when he's actually like holding the knife and threatening her with it. And that's what finally sort of makes him stop. But because
Well,
he,
she starts to channel his father
yes,
or pretend to be his father.
yeah, I felt like Rebecca was outright delusional when Hal basically says this isn't real, and she looks back at him and says, "This is the only thing that's real." And I thought, "Oh my God, she's insane." That's a worst case scenario of a person feeling that the kink relationship overrides everything else in reality. Hal is forced to safe word because it's the only thing that might crack her frame, her delusion, her commitment to dominating him. So, what was your thought when he actually said his sanctuary safe word?
Well, number one, I don't actually know that that's his safe word. He
Okay.
says it a couple times, but it doesn't stop her. He falls really fast psychologically, frankly, over and over and over again. So, to the point where I started feeling like maybe this is something they've been working up to.
Hmm.
Maybe he's been struggling his whole life. And if we go back to the pictures she saw in the hallway, the mother and the father are looking ahead, but little Hal is looking at his father, kind of with his eyes shifted to the side, looking at him, almost like he's afraid.
Yeah.
They're kind of like, oh shit, what am I going to do? How am I going to, be? And he keeps talking a lot of bluster. So all these things where he's pushing back, he's trying to stand up for himself. It felt like so much bluster. Her stuff just felt like over the top crazy, but his just felt like fake bluster. Like it
Mhm.
wasn't real. Like, and there were these things that she would hit. And I came back to the watch. She demonstrates how she uses her voice, can make her voice deeper a couple of times. He claims that she said something that she later reads back to him from a book about his father that were actually his father's words.
Mhm.
And so I kept wondering how much of this is really a setup to help him work through his issues with his father so he can be his authentic self, his real self.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
think maybe that's what she meant by this is the only thing that's real. It's not the facade that you put on to go to work. It's
mhm.
not the perfect son. It's not the dutiful son. It's the who you really are at your core. That's the real thing.
Mhm.
And that's what I got out of it is
Yeah. I I mean, yeah, they're trying. I mean, the question of what's real in a person is at the heart of this story. And yeah, and basically Hal says that this is what I'm doing. I'm learning to be assertive. I'm learning to deal with he's like externalizing his negative self-talk onto Rebecca and having her say it back to him and
yeah,
standing up to it, or at least like being able to process it without panicking.
yeah.
And
And I think because he reacts, he backs all the way back into the bathroom,
yeah,
into a corner. And she just, and she basically ends up demanding that he admit. that he doesn't have to be his father,
Yeah.
doesn't have to live up. And this, she kept going back and forth between negative and positive things, saying positive things, but that was like the last thing was say that you don't have to be like your father, that you don't have to be what he wants you to be. And then she cuddles him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then last scene, right? Suddenly we're back. It's daytime. She wakes up and I'm like, who the hell falls asleep when you just he's basically destroyed everything in this hotel room. You've both had knives at each other's throat. He's tied you up. You've raped him. Who falls asleep in a situation like that?
Mhm.
Nobody. Nobody would fall asleep in a situation like that. And then it made me remember the second time. In the beginning, he's on the phone and he's ordering food service. And some of the items he's ordering are for dinner, but some of them are for breakfast.
Hmm.
And I'm like, huh, was the plan for her to be there that whole night?
Now, after we have another transition, sort of the coda of the story, this is when it's the morning. They've both woken up. Hal has been like cleaning up the room. He gets the idea. For a moment, we think that like normality and sanity has prevailed. And Rebecca's just going to take the watch, go on her way, and put her life back together. But then Hal goes and follows her outside and says, "No, you should take my job. You should be the CEO because you're like all these. I was raised by executive class people, and they're all trying to be like you, but you're the real thing." So, and they talk about the management buyout and all this. And she asks, "What would you do?" And basically, "I'll be your house husband slash slave." And she says, "That being like that drives people insane." And he basically shrugs that off and says, "Yeah, I'll do it." And I just felt like this is really bizarre because first, does me being a good pro dominatrix make a person qualified to run a multi-billion dollar company?
Guess it depends on what you think qualifies a person for that.
Okay.
So there was a study that came out a few years ago, before the pandemic, that said the people who tend to reach like the heights of the corporate ladders, oftentimes they tend to be sociopaths.
Oh,
They don't care about anybody else. They're very focused on getting their own way, blah, 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 blah,
mm,
blah. But is that actually who is good at running a company? Because oftentimes those are not the people actually doing the work, right? They're just the people with their name
yeah.
and they get the big salary. They're not the ones making the day-to-day decisions and stuff. If she can use the skills of seeing into somebody to like encourage them to become their best selves and discourage people from doing other things that maybe aren't helpful to the business, which I could see doing some of the skills that we've seen her use back and forth, maybe. She seems to have read a lot about the company. She seems to know more of the lingo, which makes me wonder, like, if she has another job, what is it? Did she maybe go to business school and then
mm,
fell into pro dom as a way to make an income when she hit like a glass ceiling? But I don't think it innately makes you better or worse for it.
okay.
Um, I do think we can go back a second here. The words that are said, I think, are really important in this coda section because she comes out. And like you said, he's cleaning up. And then there's a knock on the door and he opens it and it's breakfast,
Mm,
right? He wheels in the breakfast cart and she looks at it. And she's, by the way, completely calm, and everything. And she's like, oh, that's nice, but I can't stay. I need to get going. He's like, oh, yeah, I should get going too, because he's been supposedly fielding calls from his mother for this sort of big like dinner. He's going to become CEO. No one mentions this 4 million or $6 million. No one mentions videos. No one mentions any of this. And that was the thing for me that was like, oh, has their scene finally ended? Are they
Did,
like moving on? So
didn't
I
you
was
say she
then,
deleted it? That she deleted the
she
video?
claims she did, but
Yeah.
what we see her do is open her phone. I didn't see her delete anything.
Mm.
And also it wouldn't erase all the audio recordings she made.
Yeah.
Because as you said, you point out, she says, I made all those recordings for myself so I could listen to them. So she
Yeah.
does have evidence, video or not. So then
Well,
when
it's
he
like,
runs after her, it's I thought this was a really interesting setup. So in the bathroom, you mentioned how she sits there and blocks the doorway. He gets into the elevator and he's kind of like, what if I didn't go to this thing? What if I didn't do this? And he's sort of proposing all these questions, like, would she do this? Would she do that? And she's like, well, what would you do? First thing is he'd have to like find a lot of money to buy back the company, right? If he was going to have that power to make her the
mm,
CEO. Because I guarantee you, no board is saying, "Oh, this pro dom here should be our CEO." That's not happening, unless it's like I don't know, a kink business or something.
mm,
Um, but he's like, "Yeah, I could do that." And the first thing he offers to be is her wife. I could be your wife. And she's like, "So you just sit around at home doing nothing?" He's like, "Look, this job, meaning the job he's offering her, the job that he would have, is like it needs all these stress. It needs someone to comfort and take care of you, reassure you, clean the house, do the laundry, all these things." And she says, "Well, what would you call that?" And he said, "Slave." And he says, "Well, what would you call it?" She says, "A slave." And he goes, "That sounds like the role I was born for." And I think that wording is important because when he's talking about this, I get the sense of genuine excitement from him.
mm.
I don't get the sense that he's necessarily playing a role. Sometimes I felt like he too is playing a role. Maybe they're working through his trauma, but there were
Yeah.
moments, like I said, where he's like, you can look at him, he's like got that little smile on his face. Um, and I don't know how much of this is part of what they planned in the elevator. Also, this is the world's longest elevator ride.
It's
I
a tall
swear.
building.
Yeah. And then at the end, he's like, would you do this? Door opens and he gets in the way of the door. Now he is the one blocking her in there to finish.
Mm,
He's making the spiel now to her, right? And she's not going to let him go easy because I don't think that's what the setup has been in this entire movie. She's never going to let him go easy. She's always like pushing for more and more and more. And the thing that finally does it for her, I guess, is she's like, "Well, how would you introduce me?" And he's like, "This is Rebecca. We're in love, and she's going to be your new CEO." And then she literally jumps on him and kisses him. And I was like, "What the fuck is going on?"
yeah. Oh, just to back up a minute, some like after they had sex and or rape, she says, then she turns around and says, "Oh, I have endometriosis. I'll probably never have a child." So it's like another, we have no proof of that either way. So,
I
but anyway,
know.
yeah. So
And that's when he offers her 2 million more. And I'm like, "What? For what?"
yeah, this is where it feels very fairy tale to me. It feels
Yeah.
almost like the ending of Pretty Woman, that this extremely rich guy will pick up this Hollywood Boulevard streetwalker and make her a princess or
But it also made me think, just how long have they been seeing each other?
yeah.
And that he's like, "We're in love." It almost feels like I started to question, was she a pro dom at all? Or they've been someone who's met, they've transitioned beyond that. And before you say, "Well, he gave her money," I give my slave money all the time for things to go do stuff. That doesn't mean I'm paying him to be my slave.
Do
You
you give him
know,
a $40,000 watch?
no,
Okay.
I give him me. That's much worth.
Of course.
But that could always be like she would give it back, or it's just,
Okay.
they're playing these roles. And because that ending where she's just like, "Okay, I was like, what? That's good?" I'm like, was this whole thing to get him to say of his own volition, "I don't want this high-powered life. That's
Hmm.
not what I want. But I also want you in my life. So how can we make this work?"
And what
Yeah,
also bothered
it's
me,
fantasy. This is complete
yeah,
fantasy.
what also bothered me was that bit where he says is like, he says like I'll be your male wife, and she says that drives people insane. And I thought, yeah, that's a very good point. He just
Well,
shrugs that
yeah,
off.
a whole bunch of women in the United States in the 50s and 60s
Yeah,
would guarantee that, mommy's
yeah,
little helper were all the pills for their psychological issues. So,
yeah. So I think this movie falls on two cliches of depictions of female dominance and male submission. The first is the idea that BDSM is therapy or functions like therapy, and
yeah,
a pro dom is like a therapist in a corset.
yeah,
The second thing is the cliche of the CEO who sees a pro dom because he can't handle the pressure of his high stress life, and he has the money. As I've mentioned before, pro doms vastly outnumber non-professional female dominance in mainstream media. I honestly think that some people, some vanilla people, cannot conceive of a non-professional female dominant. There's two sort of cliches right there. As the saying goes, BDSM can be therapeutic, but it is not therapy. And a pro dom does not function under the rules that a true therapist or psychologist or whatever has to work under. They have a vested interest in keeping their money coming. So they're just the idea that he would basically hire Rebecca as his therapist to get over his low self-esteem and make him the person who can take this job. That's flawed from the get-go, in my opinion.
yeah,
The second thing is again this whole idea that male masochism is based exclusively on this kind of psychology. Is that we could allow for comedic exaggeration or dramatic exaggeration, but it's not always that. It can be other things. It can be, sure, there are men in high power jobs or whatever who do this kind of stuff and they do get relief out of it. Um, but that's not the only kind, and it's over portrayed, over represented in mainstream media. So again, so yeah, two, not necessarily incorrect, but it's very it's two sort of cliches that they don't really question, and that makes the whole thing really hard to figure out because now you've mentioned all these things that make me think they were seeing the whole time, even when and even like his moment when he said sanctuary wasn't really getting out of that. They're oh my god, they're still in the matrix. um and
well, okay. I have played like that.
yes.
I have set up a temporary safe word with someone I've played with for a long time or had a relationship a long time because they want to, or I want to, usually we both want to, have the experience of having that ignored,
Okay.
of just being pushed further, right?
Mm.
And so you don't use your real safe word because then that would undermine the trust that you have between each other. So you create like a temporary one that you know it doesn't really mean anything
So a fake
at
safe
this
word.
moment. Yeah.
So yeah, you've got me my wheels spinning about what's real and what isn't. But
Whole thing is that way.
you see, this is what bothers me is that when vanilla people, encounter a movie like this, what are they going to think? It's unfortunate that we get a lot of our ideas about the world from mass media. And, I've been researching like the history of, say, gay and queer and trans and lesbian representation in mainstream media for a while. It's very much a one step forward, 5/6 of a step back kind of
Yeah.
process. And, we still see the problem. We still see the old cliches of like the predatory bisexual woman or things like that. And I still think that we're still hung up when it comes to representation of kinky people. We're still hung up on these cliches. of the CEO with the dominatrix, or that BDSM must be therapeutic. If I learned that a person who didn't know anything about kink had watched this movie, I would sort of cringe a little because I feel like, well, now I have to tell you, well, I have to unteach you or disabuse you of a whole bunch of different ideas. Coming from the perspective of a hypothetical newcomer, what do you think about the idea of people new to kink looking at this?
Oh, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
Don't. Uh, honestly, if this is the first movie like getting interested in kink and you found out this channel and you're watching our video, you're like, I'll start with no, don't start. Start with Love and Leashes. Hell, I'd say even start with Exit to Eden if you really want to, because at least you know that that's, a complete fantasy that turns into a stereotypical romance that goes back to fantasy. There's no confusion in that. You know what's going on. It's pretty stereotyped, and ridiculous at certain points. But this, it digs into so many deep personal things about him and his feelings about himself, and I think maybe at times her own feelings about herself,
yeah,
that you might not understand that this really could be one giant scene
yeah,
that they've set up for some reason. Maybe they're both unsure about what they want to do with the next stage of their relationship. And they're like, hey, let's play this out. We don't have answers to that because the way it just ends with the kiss in the elevator. And then you're just done. There's no aftermath and there's no before. We're just dropped into the beginning of this. I would say if you're a kinky person, you'll probably be upset at some of the same things we were. Like, wow, if this is rape. Wow, this is kidnapping. Why are they both What is going on?
yeah,
I think a kinky
yeah,
person will have that reaction, but maybe by the end they might do what we're doing now, which is going like, wait a minute. Did I miss some things during that setup that may have been a signal that something else was going on? That's one of the reasons I wanted to rewatch it
yeah,
just a few hours before we talked, is I wanted it really, really
yeah,
fresh with all my messy writing.
yeah.
Um,
And even before all of that stuff in the middle, like in my opinion, humiliation play, that's edge play, in my opinion. And I know that's a loaded term, but we can, sure, there's dangers in doing physical play, but I think you can really mess somebody up with doing humiliation play. But if you're really going at like the core of a person's self-image, you're pulling the rods out of the reactor. You're,
Yeah, and there's a fine line between like what terms, what phrases, what words,
yeah,
intonation are okay and what are not. It's
that's,
really interesting.
yeah.
My partners, one of them has no problem with being called a slut, but will immediately like walls come down if you say whore.
Mm,
And we use those words very interchangeably in American culture,
yeah.
even though frankly they're not the same word. And they just strike him very differently.
You're tap dancing in a minefield, and even something that you might even think is an innocuous something might set something off, something deep in somebody else's, in your partner's mind. That requires deep trust, deep, and even then you're taking deep risks. So
Yeah.
I think you need to be very careful about that.
It made me think, even if this is one big scene,
Yeah.
I'm betting it wasn't as scripted out as the initial part. I'm betting it was more general to kind of see what was happening in the moment, what was going on emotionally in the moment.
Mm,
You certainly can't predict when someone's, is going to get an erection or not,
yeah.
which I want to reassure everyone out there watching, just because a man's dick gets hard does not mean he wants to have sex. Okay?
Yes. It is not consent.
On the other hand, I thought this movie was really well acted.
Mm,
I thought it was
yeah.
so tight. The things that made me go, what is going on here? I think that was on purpose. I don't think it was poor acting or anything like that. I think it was really well acted. And I think perhaps even the confusion we're feeling was on purpose.
Mm, okay.
Like, I wondered, like, was part of the purpose here to mind fuck the audience a little bit?
Well, it reminded me a lot of the play by David Ives, which Venus in Fur. Are you familiar with that?
Hmm.
Okay, so that is another. It was it was filmed in French by Roman Polanski, but also seen it as it was originally a stage play. So it's another two-hander uh, story, just two actors in one set, and it's about a stage director who's trying to find an actress to play Wanda in a stage adaptation of Leopold von Sacher-Masoch's novel Venus and Furs. And this woman comes in, Wanda, who at first seems to be kind of a ditz, and but then she starts performing. She's moving back and forth. She's making she's playing on his ego and his vanity. And so then so there it is very much about like you're getting deeper and deeper into the fiction, the layers of fantasy, the layers of roles, like role play within role play, um, that I found really fascinating. And it's I th think it's a better version of this because it doesn't make any pretense that it ends on a very fantastic note. It's not meant to be taken literally. It kind of steps completely out of reality at the end of the story. I was intrigued by this battle of wills between the two of them, but I was also sort of had the problem of like, oh, we can just go back to reality now, but except I'll put you in charge of my multi-million-dollar family business and everything will be fine. I kind of almost wish it had been more fantastic, more dramatic, more theatrical, more detached from reality. So many of these movies, I feel that somebody, had this very superficial idea of what kink is, and the idea that people really do it is almost like irrelevant to them. We talked about the Duke of Burgundy earlier, and I heard an interview with the director of that movie, and someone asked him about like the story and about how that's a very theatrical, very sort of unrealistic, almost dreamlike film. And somebody pointed out, there are real people who do dominant submissive relationships, and like how does that work with your very sort of dreamy fantastic play? And he just breezily said all is artifice. He just doesn't care. That's a problem. It's like saying, it doesn't matter that there's real people in the world who do this. I've created my little pocket universe with its own rules that have nothing to do with people in the real world, and we just play that out there. And I think that misleads people and causes a lot of confusion and misunderstanding.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think either of us would recommend this, at least certainly not as an educational
Oh,
movie
no,
about kink. Yeah.
no. I think you have a field day if you showed it to a group of real life
Yeah.
femdom male subs and see like what they got out of it,
Yeah.
if anything.
I think they might, enjoy it on a sort of a camp level. You don't try to learn driving from watching Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, the director and the writer of this, they haven't done a ton of things.
Yeah.
Like the writer has like 6 credits and the director has 6 credits. At least they're not the same person, right?
Yeah. This is
Um,
only the Zachary Wygod. This is only his second feature.
yeah, so they're fairly new, and in that sense, it's very gutsy to try to do something like this. That's, two-handed, that's so tight,
Mm.
that's so confusing. And yet, I'm going, what did I watch? Because I can't be certain if this was two people being broken psychologically. And at the end, that's why they agree to do whatever it is they're, have try this relationship out, or this was a giant scene. I feel like it could be either.
Yeah.
I feel a little more like leaning towards what I said, that it's one big scene, but still that ending, we should definitely say to people, if you enjoyed this, please subscribe. We have a channel that's just for this, and then I also share this on my own personal channel, and share it if you liked it. If you've seen the movie, leave some comments. Tell us what you thought about it.
Yes, we'd love to hear about your opinion.
And we're going to try to do more of these this year now that I'm less stressed out. Talk about someone in the CEO position being stressed out. Um, and so our goal is to do 6 of these here in 2026 and get them up for you guys. Um, we've got a schedule, so hopefully we'll stick to it. And I promise, get those 2 that we did before up. Um, it's just going to take a little while. And Peter, anything you want to end with?
I've said my piece.
Okay. All right. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night,
Or
everyone.
good day, everyone, depending on when you're seeing it.